Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of the Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
Thanks, Brad. As a business and healthcare law firm, it's important to also focus on the details. Mm-hmm. This season's theme is Zoom In. Once we know our big picture vision or strategy, we have to roll up our sleeves to get the work done. With each episode this season, we'll have our typical stories and make sure we talk about specific actions to focus on for 2022.
Now, Michael, have you ever heard the statement, he's a modern-day snake oil salesman?
Well, Brad, yes, I have. It means someone who deceives people in order to get money from them. And unlike you, I was not alive when the traveling salesman arrived into town to sell the latest cure-all tonic.
Fake news. As a reminder, Michael is older than me. But your definition is correct of what a snake oil salesman is. This has been a common expression used to describe someone who sells or promotes a fraudulent cure or some type of remedy. And typically, this is as best described as a scammer or a scam. But Michael, like a lot of expressions, do you know the origins of the term snake oil salesman?
Well, Brad, I think what you're really saying here is that one of us is going to tap into Siri to give the answer. I'll let you do it.
You would be correct. And so when I was speaking with our well-paid research assistant, Siri, earlier, Siri had pushed me to a bunch of articles. But basically, in the 1800s, 1,000 of Chinese immigrants moved to the United States to help work on the Transcontinental Railroad. Most of these people, when they came over, they brought a lot of their various medicines with them, including snake oil. Now, it was made of the oil of a Chinese water snake, and when used properly, this snake oil helped reduce inflammation. And doing so, it really helped affect them, at the end of the day. And so they rubbed it on their joints and they'd start feeling better. Well, the Americans who started seeing this, they said, oh, wow, this looks great. Will you share it? And they were blown away by the effects of how well it worked.
Well, based on what you just described, I'm guessing that something went wrong for this to become a negative term.
See, you're the smart one here, and you would be correct. A gentleman named Clark Stanley, a.k.a. the Rattlesnake King, he learned all about the healing power of rattlesnake. He had learned all about this healing power, and he said, well, I think I can do this with rattlesnake oil. So in 1893 at the World's Expedition in Chicago, he premiered the rattlesnake oil cure-all.
Is Stanley related to the Tiger King?
Yeah, I don't think he's related to the Tiger King. But unfortunately for the Rattlesnake King, in 1917, the federal investigators seized a shipment of his oils and learned that he really wasn't using snake oil. In fact, when they tested it, it was basically beef fat, red pepper, and turpentine. That's right. Stanley's signature product didn't even contain a drop of actual snake, water, Chinese water snake, or rattlesnake. Hundreds of his customers obviously discovered that they had been deceived over these years. On a fun little side note, modern medicine eventually learned that the Chinese water snake actually does contain this healing oils, but the rattlesnake, it doesn't have the same impact. So one Chinese one Chinese water snake is comparison to 3 different rattlesnakes. So even if the Rattlesnake King was doing it correctly, he would need a lot more rattlesnakes for this even to work the same way.
Man, you actually sounded smart there for a minute. Pretty impressive.
Well, I tried.
So over 100 years later, people still use snake oil as a negative description thanks to the Rattlesnake King.
That's right.
And I'll just say this, Brad. I hope that people are not quoting the Tiger King 100 years from now, and that there's not some famous expression around golden nuggets.
Okay, I hope that phrase does not become famous. And for anyone who does not know what we're talking about, there was a Netflix show that came out last year called The Tiger King, and it's just all kind of bad stuff. But it's like watching a train wreck. You can't stop. All right, but the good news is in the healthcare industry, we no longer have these traveling salesmen that sell snake oils.
True, but there are figurative snake oil salesmen in healthcare. And so I think we need to bring in our special guest today to help shed some light on the modern version of the snake oil salesman. And so today joining us is our law partner, Jeff Segal, and our friend, more importantly. Jeff has been on the episode before. He is an attorney licensed in California. He's also a physician. He went to the medical school at Baylor College of Medicine in Texas. He is a neurosurgeon, and probably the most important degree, of course, is his undergrad degree at UT, Hookham. He's a founder of Medical Justice and eMerit, and wife Shelly, twins Josh and Jordan. He is a cyclist, a scuba diver, and a climber, and has many great stories. In fact, I wonder if Jeff just already knew that story when we were trying to use Siri to tap into it. Welcome.
Hey, great to be with you. And no, I actually didn't know the story of snake oil itself. We had interviewed on our podcast a medical historian who talked about the origin of the Board of Medicine, the first one of which was in West Virginia, surprisingly enough, but it was a way to consolidate control over the various philosophies of quote-unquote medicine, one of which was snake oil. But what I learned today was that snake oil was useful. So it's too bad the snake oil salesman is used as a pejorative as opposed to a term of adulation.
Agree with that. Well, and as Michael was bringing you on today, we've had you on other episodes where we talked about your different companies, but we really wanted to focus on eMerit today. So for our audience who had not heard that prior episode, can you kind of give everyone an understanding what the mission is for eMerit?
Yes. So eMerit is the platform we have with Medical Justice, which is focused on protecting and preserving a doctor's most important asset, namely his or her reputation. And we do it three ways. One is to monitor what patients are saying about the doctor online. Number two, help de-escalate conflict. It may mean reaching out to the rating site, trying to draw to their attention the fact that a bad review is a violation of the terms of use. It may mean putting together a HIPAA-compliant response to educate the public that not all is as it is alleged to be. Or sometimes there are some tools in terms of reaching out to the patient directly to get, to solve their problem and update the review. And then finally, the third prong is to capture feedback from patients at the point of service, typically on an iPad, and get it uploaded to the dominant review sites. So instead of being defined by 2 or 3 nasty reviews, you're defined by the silent majority. And if you're doing great work and you have a high-performing practice, the silent majority should become vocal, visible, and actually dominate the conversation.
And so, I think it intuitively it puts a premium on a medical practice to want to capture these online reviews. It becomes something of utmost importance.
Yeah. So a decade ago, I was the skeptic. I thought that who would pick a doctor based on online reviews? I certainly wouldn't, but it turns out at the time, I was the dinosaur. In fact, each and every year, reviews factor into the selection of not just toaster or where you're going, what hotel you're going to stay in, but what doctor you will see. It's social proof, and social proof is considered to be extremely valuable. And what we learned over time is that not only do those who have positive reviews see new patient volume and revenue go up, it goes up a lot. So it was kind of surprising to me, the correlation between online reviews, which would be the least expensive form of marketing, and the outcome, the result, namely more patients, more revenue, very successful marketing program.
That's awesome. And Jeff, you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I've heard you say this before. So what does the term false negative review mean?
So it's interesting. A negative review is something that disparages the practice or the reputation, and false is sometimes put up there to demonstrate that it's not, that the patient may not even be a patient. It may be a competitor. It may be an ex-employee. It could be an ex-spouse. We've seen it all. In fact, recently we saw someone down the hall posting nasty negative reviews about someone on the same floor. Why? Perceived competitor. So littering the internet and review space to disparage and sully the reputation of your neighbors, no bueno, not good.
And I love. We were talking recently about a story you have about just the idea of capturing fake reviews, and I think that the audience would benefit just to hear that story and kind of see how this impacts the practices.
So I was turned on to this by a woman that runs a website called Fake Review Watch. So Fake Review Watch, it's her website. It's also a YouTube channel. And I think she had a personal experience where she was trying to select a healthcare professional and actually made the choice based on reviews. And her experience with this practice was just horrible. And she said, what is this disconnect between what I'm reading online and her personal experience? And I think the practice threatened her. I can't recall specifically when she wrote her honest review. And it led her into this rabbit hole of these business opportunities where you can purchase reviews. So what do I mean by that? She highlighted Facebook groups where people are buying and selling reviews. They're either trading reviews. For example, one business would say, I've never been to your business and I never intend to go to your business. In fact, I don't even live in your part of the country. But let's try this. You write a positive review on my site and I'll write a positive review on your site. So it's a review trading group. But wait, there's more. Then there's also review purchase, where with these Facebook groups, and it's not limited to Facebook, there are other venues where you can seek out these brokers, that you can have one of these brokers use someone who owns a mobile phone in Bangladesh, for example, and you pay the broker $50, they pay the person in Bangladesh about $1, and they'll post a positive review on your website, and you write the review. So basically, you're authoring the review, and the person in Bangladesh is posting the review on Yelp, on Google, etc. So she was able to connect the dots, putting together a nice timeline and spreadsheet, and outed a number of practices that are using one or both of these techniques, which she was basically saying, what a coincidence. Look at this spreadsheet that I've created. You have one individual posting a review for a moving company in California, for a veterinarian in Texas, for a plastic surgeon in New York, and some other vendor in Wichita, Kansas. This person really gets around. And so she was able to connect these dots. And if you start to look at the math in terms of the probability of this happening, you're probably more likely to win a Powerball lottery than seeing all this take place. So what happened? She then published this on her site. So instead of being the recipient of all this glowing praise on these sites, now you're on the receiving end of, looking like a person that games the system. And then once Google and Yelp found out, they took down all these reviews, and they probably took down even more reviews. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the unique aspects of healthcare, why this would be no bueno.
This kind of reminds me of this, hearing your story about how everything she had to map out. I feel like one of her rooms had like little red dots with a rope connecting from one side to the next. So like the brilliant mind, to be able to figure out all those different moving pieces, that's pretty incredible work. And hat tip to her for being able to figure out that just by one experience that there had to be something out there that was not right. But, let's just take an even bigger step back here. Right here is, why do you think these people are getting reviews from, either posting on each other's sites or going to Bangladesh? What do you think is happening here?
It's a great question. It's easy, cheap and easy. If you can purchase a positive review for $50 or trade reviews for someone else and get 20 or 30 reviews, the thinking is that each positive review is worth hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So just think of it as a return on your investment. Now, in their brain, the practice is saying zero risk. The only risk is the $50 investment to make this happen. And the upside is potentially hundreds, if not thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars. What a great ROI. But I don't know that in their brains they're calculating the potential risk. I don't think they've calculated that there's a dogged investigator with the spreadsheet on her wall connecting the dots. And one of her beefs is that she's doing this by hand, and she's been able to accomplish an outcome or a result connecting these dots. But Google and Yelp and Facebook, with all the money and resources in the world, must be able to do this in an automated fashion, but they've chosen not to, except when she outed them. So she does have a beef with the businesses who are doing it. She's got a bigger beef with the review sites that are allowing this ecosystem to thrive.
Sounds more like a commune than an ecosystem.
Yes, it would definitely be a commune.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, we all know, and the audience knows, that the healthcare field is highly regulated. And so reviews that are not real, that would lead a patient to go and receive medical services, I think that's a problem.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I think we need to go to commercial, and I may actually go take a quick shower after hearing that story. And then let's come back and discuss the regulatory impact of this on the healthcare side.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. And we're still here with our guest who has been with us before, Jeff Segal.
This season's theme is Zoom In. For our audience, it's clear that capturing patients' reviews is important, but submitting false positive reviews seems to be less than honest, if not illegal. Brad.
That's me.
What regulatory body helps protect the general public from such deceit?
So I'm going to go in two areas here, just on a very high level, which understand that as Michael said when we were right before commercial, the medical industry is highly regulated, and this goes with almost every aspect, including advertisement. And so the American Medical Association has issued basically their code of ethics and some advisory opinions that are out there on what you should be doing from an advertising piece. And high level, again, they say, like, you can't be misleading people, you can't have false or deceptive information, or include claims of experiences or quality of services that basically don't exist. And as many of y'all may have heard us talk about before, the AMA at the end of the day is just submitting guidelines that some medical boards look to and actually copy verbatim. But ultimately, they don't have any ability to issue fines. It's just kind of, this is what we think the rest of the medical boards could do. So let's jump into who can do that. And this is where a lot of people don't even realize the Federal Trade Commission, which is obviously the federal government, part of their, when they were founded, was to protect consumers from anti-competitive, deceptive, and unfair business practices. And so when you dive into their act, one of the things they look for is on the advertising side, if someone is deceiving someone through advertisement, they can issue civil fines. And they have issued that to IV bars and obviously during COVID, when people are saying, oh, this, if you come in and get this treatment, this will cure COVID or whatever it is. So although fines are rare, when they do hit there, it can be very impactful.
So if these are rare, Jeff, I'd love for you to talk about something less rare and some of the other bodies that have authority in these situations.
So relevant to physicians, the big concern would be medical licensing boards, because you need the piece of paper, the license, to make a living. That piece of paper allows you to practice your trade, your profession. And if it is impacted in any way through discipline or curtailing of your privileges, you can't make money. So what do I mean by that? The State Board of Medicine, and I haven't read the Medical Practice Act for every state and every territory, but for the most part, they all have a clause which says no false and deceptive advertising. No false and deceptive advertising. Decades ago, you couldn't advertise at all. Mm-hmm. There was no advertising whatsoever for any of the professions, be it law or medicine, but that was loosened up and or dialed back so you can't deliver false and deceptive advertising. So if you have fake if you're purchasing reviews that are fake from people who have never been to your practice, arguably a complaint can be filed, which can turn into an investigation. Investigation can turn into an accusation. Accusation can turn into discipline, a consent order, or a hearing, none of which is good. And even if you prevail, the publicity associated with this cannot be good. You're ultimately tarred as a person who cannot be trusted. And in healthcare, what are we buying and selling? We're really selling trust.
True. And I just have to believe, based on all of our experiences with medical boards over the years, that if they found out a medical practice was part of one of these review communes, that it would not be taken lightly. I think it would be frowned upon.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a fair amount of pressure to investigate that. There's already pressure on medical boards to discipline more doctors. I can't remember the name of the organization, maybe Public Citizen, but each year they put out their list saying that all these bad doctors are able to practice without any restrictions. The medical boards aren't investigating. Of course, that turns into a pendulum where, in my estimation, some of the boards have become draconian, investigating everything to the end of the universe, probably unfairly and inappropriately putting people in the crosshairs. But why make it easy for organizations like Public Citizen to say that the public is being deceived? And if it's so much easier to actually get real reviews from real patients, well, maybe it's not easier, but there's certainly easy ways to do it, and you don't have to take any risk by doing that. Why wouldn't you just adopt the simpler approach rather than taking risk? I think part of the issue is that the people listening and the physician audience at large just does not believe in their heart of hearts they'll ever get caught. Mm-hmm. I mean, who would know? But I'm telling you, these groups are on Facebook in plain sight. In fact, that's how the proprietor for Fake Review Watch was able to complete her spreadsheet. She joined one of these groups. She was invited in, and she got to see the ping pong ball going back and forth, and then wrote about it.
Wow. Well, if the risk to your license isn't enough, we got a little kicker we can add to it. We've talked about this before, but if you're a licensed medical provider and you have a disciplinary action, it gets recorded in the National Practitioner Data Bank. And we've talked about the data bank before. This is the proverbial permanent record that follows doctors around and their disciplinary history. And the hospitals, the insurance carriers, and other state licensing boards all can check the permanent record of a provider and see if they've had an event.
Yeah. And I want to add two more points to what Jeff had thrown out. First off, going back to what you said, a lot of these doctors or providers think they're not going to get caught because they're like, oh, they'll never figure it out. Well, remember, and our audience knows this, is how do you get caught? Well, angry people will report you, and typically that could be your patients, like in this case, who started the whole investigation, your former employees who are mad at you, sometimes maybe your competitors if they figured out, and finally, as Michael and I have seen multiple times, the ex-spouses or ex-lovers who are scorned and they know about it. So, yeah, it does get found out. So I think that's the first thing. The other piece is even if your state has a poorly written medical advertising rules, let's just say, the medical boards have this one thing they love. It's their catch-all for everything. And this is where I've seen when they don't know what to do with someone, they said, it's just unethical and unprofessional what you're doing. And that almost every single medical board we've ever looked at, that seems to be, if I can't figure out if you're actually violating a rule, I know this doesn't seem professional. And so, no matter your state, submitting false reviews is a huge risk to your license. And Jeff, you had said it already. I mean, most of these people work pretty damn hard to get their license. I know how hard I work to get mine. I know how hard you work to get yours. And, I don't want to jeopardize it by having some fake review. But let's start closing out today. So, Jeff, I'm going to start with you. As we zoom in on these online reviews, what are some of the takeaways you can give our audience as to, and you kind of alluded to this right in the beginning, but I want to make sure they heard it, is how they can acquire online reviews without violating these rules and regulations?
Right. So there are probably 4 ways to get reviews. One would be ask your patients, will you give me a review? And of course, all your patients will shake their head up and down saying they're going to do it, then they go home and they don't do it. But that's probably single-digit uptake. You could email your patient a link and make it a little bit easier. All they have to do is click on it and take action. So you've removed one of the friction points for capturing a review, and that's a little bit higher uptake. Mm-hmm. Number 3 would be to use a texting platform. That's probably a story for another day regarding the pitfalls of using texting without dotting I's and crossing T's, but that is probably a somewhat more effective way to get people to do it either at the point of service or soon after they've left. And to me, the easiest way to capture reviews is with a point of service review capture system. We're asking the patient for feedback, not reviews, but feedback. And then with the patient's permission, you ask if it can be uploaded to the dominant review sites of the internet. Once you adopt a program similar to that, you'll find that you can start capturing many reviews. They go to multiple platforms, and the silent majority will have spoken. What you will also have avoided is the temptation to cut a corner, go to one of these Facebook groups, Facebook brokers out to Bangladesh, capturing reviews. You may get a near-term bump on that, but long-term, I think the odds are against you. You're better off doing it the clean and appropriate way without snake oil.
Fair enough. Michael, what are some takeaways you have for today?
Well, first, you don't want to be like the Rattlesnake King or the Tiger King and join one of these review communes that we talked about. And I realize that most of our audience is not going to go out and do something as seemingly obviously nefarious as going and getting fake reviews. But I think a greater point is not to take shortcuts in your marketing and advertising in healthcare, and that if it seems easy and it seems like something that will give you a boost without any effort or substance behind it, that you're probably creating some serious risk to your practice.
All good points. Well, Jeff, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate you jumping in with us today. And please give the audience a shout out for your podcast real quick.
Yeah, so our podcast, Medical Liability Minute, where we speak for more than a minute. So it's a Medical Liability Minute. You can find it on medicaljustice.com as well as the other podcast platforms.
Yeah, and for our audience, we'll also have it in the notes underneath this podcast. So you can, if you want to listen to it, good. And I will say that we've been blessed to be on his podcast too, so we enjoyed it being on. It's a great podcast. But everybody, that's all the time we have. So next Wednesday, we have a special guest. Amy Anderson will be joining us to discuss Brinson Anderson Consulting, and they help coach surgeons and private practice to become the best versions of themselves. Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe, make sure to give us a 5-star rating, and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.